welcome everyone to this lounge on a lot of surveys that we have or that we have seen that are there on the effects of COVID-19 on the music sector. And we are very, very grateful that we have found amongst our members some who will already share some first thoughts, some first insights on their findings. We know that a lot of these surveys are ongoing, and especially with the corona situation changing really weekly, daily, it is of course not easy to have these surveys. So you have a survey, the moment you collect the answers, it might be outdated already. However, we think it is really important to share what the findings that we have, even if they might be a little bit older, to also be prepared maybe to have questions to be asked in the future. So let's see, it would be, so we are really, really thankful for all of you to be with us, to share your experiences and results with us. And for the beginning, so we have 4 presentations, and we would like to start with Stéphane Grosclaude from France, from the Plate-Forme Interrégionale, and he's reporting also a bit on what is going on in France and the preparation of making a meaningful survey. So Stéphane, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. We will try to make it interesting. I'm a coordinator of an umbrella association, Plate-Forme Interrégionale, which is consisting of regional resources center for music practice, but also National Association of Professional Teaching and Coaching in Music Practice, which is actually 4 national associations and 6 regional resource centers. As you probably heard, there are many initiatives of surveys in France, from the Ministry of Culture, of course, to very small organizations willing to have an overview on what's going on. I just heard this morning that the first estimation in France is about 26,000 jobs destroyed in this year in the performing arts sector. The first idea we had was to have an overview of what's going on for our members, because as they have some development in responsibilities, they have not stopped activities, but they have cancelled many training courses, but we couldn't have an idea of the impact of the COVID-19. So we thought that we would organize a survey, but not yet. We will begin the survey on the 1st of July. And it is not clear at the moment if we will do it again every 2 months or every 3 or 4 months. But the idea is to have an overview and a regular situation on what is the impact in terms of activity of employment, but also in terms of financing and public and beneficiaries accompaniment on a long term. So some of our members have different initiatives, and I would like to take the opportunity to give you some information about it. Cadence, which is the regional center in east of France, organized a crisis observatory, and they are ongoing, of course, on their survey, but there are some inputs that we shared this morning, and some of them are the constatation that there are contrasting situations, especially because music schools have not been able to start again in their activity, and not before September. And there is definitely, even though many people are using technologies, there is definitely a big digital shift and new strategy to think about it, which makes very much disappointment and isolation on daily practice for many people, users and stakeholders. And many questions, for example, about the management situations, which is not clear, because We have in France a special fee for unemployed people due to COVID-19, but some people are still working as they have this fee, and this is troubling. They need much support for establishment in defining a recovery plan, and some need for connection and communication with family, especially in music schools. And most of our members are actually working on rethinking a professional framework, considering the national protocols that we have from the sanitary part, from the work part, from the responsibility of employers. But there are many independents that have actually no information and don't know exactly how to do. We had this morning a discussion very interesting about collective practice, vocal and music practice. And the idea that came up was to consider a new normality, meaning that there are fragmented practice to think about that we can lead to collective practice. We can think about new framework in terms of project with face-to-face and fragmented rehearsals on different schedules with small groups, with short sessions to work on other aspects than only musical, but also vocal, pedagogic, etc. And as we say in French, to work in a project mode, in a collaborative way, including people and competencies that we are not always thinking about. I mean, for example, a choir conductor or orchestra conductor is often supposed to do everything, and we go to him or to her asking to do it. But maybe there are many people in the orchestra, in the choir, that we can mobilize to help in doing things. So the idea is to change the focus on a new educational approach, not to start over and the same condition, but taking advantage of the opportunity that offered new technology especially. We thought about also inviting composers to rethink their pieces and how they can help in music school, orchestra projects especially, and how we can give empowerment of leading teams on the ability to write, to compose, and also to organize some regional resources persons and organizations so that we can have more contacts between the different institutions, organizations, and networks in the different territories. We are going to work now on a double level, from one part between peers, like conductors, school teachers, etc., in the context and the profession that they are doing. And in a second part on the transversal aspect about all that concerns methods, tools, and resources, which are often very similar, and even though they are used in different contexts. To come back to the survey we are going to implement, the idea is to have a grid that will be the same used for each organization, and we will update this grid every 2 or 3 months. And at the same time, I will have an interview with a representative of each our members to discuss about what's going on and what are the different aspects that are appearing in the updating of the survey. I just would like to share the grid, if I can have access to sharing my screen. Is it possible? Yes. Please consider this as an ongoing tool, and it is not definitely the definite version of this grid, but it can give you an idea of how we want to implement the survey, considering the activities that are concerned, the fact that it was cancelled or reported in 2020 or in 2021, the number of concert meeting, training, advising rules, and the amount that impact this report or cancellation. And in terms of remunerations that are maintained for people working for this, and the impact on the contract that are cancelled during the process, the number of people concerned, and also some details about the different issues on activities, salaried or permanent or occasional salaried people, etc. So this is the grid as it has been worked with our members, and that will be implemented normally from the 1st of July. And maybe that's what I can say in the first idea of ongoing process for us.
Great. Thank you very much, Stéphane. I think it's really good to have, think about this on a long-term basis, because I think we now all see that this is unfortunately something that is not over as quickly as we hoped. I would just like to know, have you been in touch with other organizations? Because I'm sure, or I assume that in France there is also other organizations that are conducting surveys or studies, or do you know of any of those? And do you bring, who is anybody bringing them together? Is anyone channeling these?
Yes, it is. There is different initiatives at different level. Many national and very big organizations, such as UFISC, Union of Cultural Organization, mixing cultural organization, but also more social organizations in citizen dimension. Let's say this. I think there are more than 50 or 60 members, but members of members more than 5,000, I think. There are also associations like IFAC, Institut Français d'Art Choral, that began a process with regular webinar on how to continue collective vocal practice. One of our members, AFPC, French Association of Singing Teachers, who did the same. And they are all producing some resources rather on the professional aspect, on the specificities for each profession. And also there are many surveys on employment, financial impact for venues, whether it is pop music venues or festivals, and many organizations. In the field of music, I have listed about 100 national organizations in France, just in the field of music. That means there are so many organizations, and the problem actually is that most of them are very specialized and close to themselves, as I can say. And this is exactly where PFI, Plate-Forme Interrégionale, is trying to move forward, because after several reforms in France, a territorial reform, I've ever spoke about it in our EMC meetings. We moved from 23 regions to 13, and we have many cuts in public policies, many transfers of competencies from the state to local authorities. And this brings to a more need of interaction and interconnection. And this is exactly our plan since more one year. And we have been pointing out about 40 national organizations with which we have some connections, more or less good connections. And we began to open up some discussion areas with specifically collective practice associations where there are more than 10 associations meeting every month. And in these kind of areas, there are initiative ideas. We try to forward any information we have. And there are many networks going together actually. And this is one of the good effect and impact of the COVID-19.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Is anybody else having a question to Stéphane? Maybe we can come back later. If not, I would like to give the floor to Katharina and Sofía, giving probably also an international perspective on the survey that they had conducted or the findings from amongst your members. So Katharina, Sofía, I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. So maybe first a short introduction about the IAMZ. We are the International Music and Media Center, and we are the global network for the performing arts film industry. So what we do is we connect the performing arts institutions with film producers and broadcasting stations. Basically, our members are active in those sectors. We have around 150 members in 40 countries. And what we do, we have actually a survey planned for tomorrow. And so of course we cannot present the results yet, but the goal is to find about our members' usage of online tools for buying and selling licenses, film licenses, of course in the sector of performing arts films. And of course many events this spring have taken place online. And what we want to do is to find out if our members have attended such events and if these events have actually boosted their business. Because we also have our event in mind. We organize the largest trade fair for performing arts films next February. So this is one thing that we need to find out. And what we have done is we've been in very close contact with our members over this time. Email exchange, and we've spoken on the phone with many of them. And we asked them first how the situation has affected their business, and well, which measures they have taken to kind of get around this how it has affected them, and what they need from the IAMZ as an organization. And what we found out is that most of them, what they need from an organization like the IAMZ is to stay connected with each other, like get information and like strong and stable communication, and also to find out what others are doing. And well, we asked mainly film producers, broadcasters, and also orchestras and performing arts institutions how it has been. And what film producers told us is that, well, many concerts and events have been cancelled. So that means that many projects that they had planned for this summer are of course on hold or totally cancelled. Even projects in 2021, because some companies cannot take the risk to agree to a project next year. So many things are being cancelled in the near future. And some film producers are still busy with post-production. So concerts they filmed maybe a few months ago, they are still editing. So they're busy, which is good. But of course, there's a lot of uncertainty because at some point they're going to have to need new projects. And what they also told us is that they, some of them, like there's some new projects coming up in the online sector, which wouldn't have happened without COVID-19. So it's kind of the positive or innovative outlook. And yes, some of course have the fear that the bigger players will survive and the smaller ones who usually are more innovative won't survive. So that's a common fear actually. And what they also said is that they have, of course, business partners at broadcasting stations. And it was at the beginning very hard to reach them because broadcasting stations also started to work from home, but it's very large structures. So it's very difficult to just grab the phone and reach someone. it's harder than if you want to contact just a small office who just moved to home office. And yeah, what they have been doing to get over this is just staying in touch with their partners, and some have stopped completely to cut costs, and some others are coming up with creative ideas, like with online, you know, like many artists played concerts from home, so some producers have been involved in that. And yeah, what broadcasters told us was also very interesting. Many events, including sports events, have been cancelled. So that means there's more slots free for performing arts and music programming. But because there's no filming, they're really using a lot of archive material. And well, some producers also said that's kind of positive, because if they wouldn't have filmed it before, we would have nothing to show right now. So it shows how valuable it is.
It actually also gives the value to what we do,
yes,
as an organization, actually.
Yes. Yeah. And what broadcasters also said is that they have less revenues from advertising, because many companies are reducing or cutting expenses on advertising. So that's also a problem. And many public broadcasters also stated that they fear that the public funding will decrease, because public funds are now going to small businesses, like to people like you and I, not to large broadcasting corporations. So yeah, that's what they told us. And of course, orchestras and concert houses, I think it's, I mean, very clear, cancelled events, cancelled tours, and they're really relying on online and streaming to stay connected with the audience.
And last but not least, actually the streaming platforms.
Yeah,
we also have, of course, streaming platforms as members, and for them, of course, it was a very exciting time, because they got a lot of new subscriptions, and also, yeah, the consumption of performing arts and culture films was quite high, and for them, of course, it was very, very intense and
profitable.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. For them, it was very interesting, and I mean, in general, it was a it is a big push towards digitalization, of course, and all the online offers and streaming offers, which have been implemented like this and with high speed. I think some of them will be used and will be normal, and what we also see is that all these big markets and fairs, as Sofía said, they are organized online or offer at least some online tools, and this is something we of course also have to think of for our next avant-premiere. This or all the workshops and academies we do, at least a part of the conference program or the market has to be online, or we have to have an online offer. That's
because
sure.
Also, even if our events actually take place physically, many companies maybe cannot afford to travel.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be flexible for our members. Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, this is about our members. I mean, we have to distinguish between the situation of our members and the situation of the IAMZ as a network, because we also organize a lot of events or have a lot of activities, and for us, we are very happy that we also curate music film or open air music film festivals. And for example, in Vienna, there's the music film festival in front of the Rathausplatz. This will take place. For example, we are very happy about this because politicians really try to make things happen, and it's now the time that they find possibilities to make things happen. But of course, academies and workshops, this is quite, it's interesting because actually the topics of the original topics of the academies we think are not that relevant at the moment anymore. So we have to rethink of the the topics and also of the timing, because for example we would have had a academy with the conservatoire in Vienna this autumn. Four conservatoires, exactly, for the media strategy and the media skills, and so, which we will not organize this autumn, but at a later point in the year, because they have to reorganize and restructure again, and coming back to the university and so all these, there are a lot of effects also on our work actually. This is, and of course, one last thing, and then maybe we stop. But this is, I think, also a big issue for you all guys, since the financial situation and economic situation of our members changes or will change. This will have, of course, also an effect on our business year next year, or not only business year. Of course, some of them will not be a member or cannot afford to be a member anymore. Or so this will, but this is something for next year. So the long-term effects are also quite remarkable, I think. Yeah. So this is our small report from Vienna. Any questions?
Yeah, exactly. Any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. From Vienna internationally.
Yes.
So, yes, Ruth, please.
Just adding a thought, not so much a question. We have seen in France, there's so many, only in France, there are so many different surveys and also activities, proposals going on. In Vienna, it's the same. On international level, even more. And you have touched upon the fact that we may have smaller events now, and that the open air festival is going on. But I think one aspect to add here is also that all this is going to be much more local than it used to be, because the rules are local. You know, the rules in Cologne are different from the rules in Bonn, whereas there are only 30 kilometers between the two communities.
Oh my God.
And also travel rules will be different. From some countries you may be able to travel abroad, from others not. Then when you come back to your home country, you have to go to quarantine or not. So all this will change a lot, and also add to the fact that online content, I mean, production and proposals of online content will remain relevant for quite a while. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, you are completely right. I mean, in Austria, at this point, we still have the same rules for every region, but maybe this will also change. We don't know yet. But I mean, this will be also interesting for us, since we organize Avant-Premiere in Berlin. And in principle, we have to take a decision in summer if and how we organize it, which is really, really difficult to take.
Everything changes so fast.
And we are quite also, since we always organize this market, for example, together with or in cooperation with the European film market and the Berlinale. And they are in, of course, I mean, from them we have heard they are also
readjusting.
It's and we Oh.
It's a chain.
Yeah.
It's a very long chain.
But the interesting thing is, for example, then we also organize a music film festival, an open air music film festival in Russia, in Yekaterinburg. And even though the situation seems to be quite difficult for them, it was always clear that they will organize and hold the film festival. So yeah, from region, from country to country, it's different. That's the conclusion, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I think that is very right. So I will, Stéphane, please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to point out the fact that often people are thinking whether they maintain or they cancel and report the activity. And I think there are alternatives, and we are not so much into how can we do it in another way. And this is very frightening to me, because I just think people are lost in the capacity of imagining something new, something else, something different. And I feel there is so much isolation and yes, isolation from many people that just don't have the idea to think about something, and we just say, okay, let's see later. And this is the most important to me, actually. How can we give back some the l'envie, the willing to do something, to move forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I mean it's true. I mean, I think in the past, in the informal lounges, we have been touching upon this a lot. It's also about really the moral health or the motivation of people to really keep up. This is really an issue, and the solution is trying to do things together. But we don't. I mean, I don't have that yet. I mean, it's there's definitely not an easy solution. I would like. I mean, is there any other question? If not, I would continue with the second part. We have 2 more things to present. But Nelleke, I saw you wanted to say something, so please.
In the Netherlands, it's also a bit the other way around. People have ideas now, but it's the big point is that we don't know what you can do with choirs and what you can do with the wind instruments. So there now I have a lot of people saying to me, "Do you know now how we could come together and play together?" But we have to wait for it. And I looked a bit about surveys, and there were not very many going on. Even if I thought there would be a lot of surveys, but everybody is more or less waiting for the next phase, because you can't see now what will happen and what will be. So we have ideas enough, but it's a bit frustrating that I can't go on with them.
Yeah, we have some of the I think you're also talking about the aerosol issue, I assume, and some of the surveys that are currently conducted, I think we have also put them together on our website following our last launch on the music education tools. You can probably check that out again. So I would like...
Sorry.
Pardon.
It's
yes.
okay.
You're sure? Okay, I would like...
Du bist auf mute.
So now, yes. I would like to give the word to you, Ruth, to give the word to Maria.
so you anticipated by muting yourself already. Thanks, Simone. Yeah, not so much more to say for me at this time than that EMC also has conducted a survey, and we have already collected some first results, and Maria is going to present these to you, and then Katharina Weinert will add a little bit on that. So the two of them, one after the other. Maria, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Yes. So as you know, we already we conduct a survey on the impact of COVID on the music sector since the beginning, almost since the lockdown started and the ban of public events and the social distancing rules started to apply until last week. We got 355 European respondents, and then the problem is that almost all the respondents replied to the survey at the beginning, or the majority of them. So maybe the overview of these answers is more what happened the first 2 weeks or 1 month of the lockdown. And the second thing is that the questions had open answers. So it's a little bit more difficult to take the objective perspective of what is happening in the country or in the sector than if you have closed answers. Then another point is the type of work. We asked them to share with us which type of work they had, if they were freelance or self-employed, or if they were employees for a company or an organization or others. So 57% of them are self-employed, and of course it's another, like they suffer other effects that maybe companies or organizations are not suffering that much. So it's also like reflected on the answers. And then again, like the countries, we had 52% of the respondents were from Bulgaria, and the second country with more respondents is Germany. And of course, it's not the same situation in Bulgaria and the same situation in Germany. And like, it's not the same situation in Hungary or in Croatia. Like, you can see really different answers. The thing is, like the open questions, I try to analyze them, like reading them and trying to find a pattern, like keywords that they were repeating a lot, and group them into different groups. Then like the first question was that if they felt that the measures to limit the spread of the COVID affect their work, and there was a 2% that said no, but again, it's like it was at the beginning, so maybe later they felt the measures limit their work, or like there was people saying no, but then they were complaining about how it affected them. So it's a little bit, I mean, mainly all of the respondents said something that they felt like home office only, but they said something that happened after the measures were taken. This is like in which way they felt it affect them. And this was an open question, and there were really good answers explaining exactly the situation they were like having in the company or every individual. And I tried to group them in several categories. It depends of the answers. There were respondents only saying that they had canceled events. There were others that they were explaining that they are working from home and what that means for them. There were other ones that they were saying that they had contracts canceled, or that they couldn't work at all, or that they were about to have a contract for the summer season and it got canceled, or the venues that were canceled. So I tried to group in different categories, and the biggest two ones is cancel events and that cannot work anymore. And there is a difference. I tried in the answers, I tried to find the difference between them. Like the first one, the cancel events includes projects or concerts or workshops, and it's more like mainly for organizations, clubs, institutions, students, so people that can still work, but they cannot work as they used to, and they are facing, like they are already seeing some effects it's gonna have in the long term. For example, there is so many organizations that can still work, but they lost all the summer season for festivals or conference, or like concerts that were canceled, and they have to, like they can still, if it was a venue or something, they can still work, but they have to give the money back to the audience that pay already for the tickets. So they still have an income, but maybe it's going to affect in the long term. And then that cannot work is more for freelance self-employees, and it's more related to the ban on public events, like teachers that they cannot meet with the students and they don't have the tools to have online learning, or producers, or to create music, you cannot get together with the other musicians, or you cannot, it mainly for this ban on public events. And there were 3 cases that were relevant, and some of them were repeating, like the canceled contracts for venues and operas or theaters, that there is like the administration part is still going maybe, but then the artistic part is not going. So all the musicians or like actors or whatever is like all cancel the contracts until further notice. And or the workflow of teachers is reduced, so maybe some of them are sent to undetermined unpaid vacations because they don't need that many, or they cannot have online lessons. And then there was a case of an audiovisual company that answered the survey, and that said that they are mainly producing videos for concerts, festivals, and tours for art for musicians, and they cannot do it anymore. So they expect that they could handle like the situation. They cannot work, but they can like financially handle the situation for 6 months. But that in 6 months, if there is nothing going on, like they cannot survive. So the main difference is that the first category, they still have income, and the other one, they don't. And this doesn't mean that the first one at the long term is not going to be like this. And then the last question is that the political measures, they should, like they think the government should apply to mitigate the effects that the COVID, the limit, like the effects that the measures taken to limit the spread of the COVID had in the sector. And again, this, like most of the answers were at the beginning. So the financial aid and support, it's already in several countries applied, at least, or they already talk about that. It's also different, like the financial aid for freelance and for organizations. And they were making the difference between those two. And then they asked for the basic income for everyone, tax reduction, postponing all the loans and repaying them at the end of the term, and increase the flexibility of conditions for project implementation and deadlines. Some of them maybe are already applied, or are they trying to be taken, but. And then there were other ones like IT upgrade for music education, to reopen the borders, to ease restrictions. So as a conclusion, I think it's like to have a better understanding of the situation, the survey should be conducted in the different types of work, like one for self-employees, one for organizations, one for companies. So you could have like a better picture of the impact that it had, because it's not the same if you talk about an organization, about the freelance. Also for countries, because it's not the same the measures that one country took already at the end of March in the music sector, or the measures that they are still, like some countries are still taking about this. So I think it would be better for the global understanding to have first report in every country, and then like and a follow-up survey, because this one, we issued this one at the middle, like mid-March, so it was at the beginning, and I think that right now so many people say that the only difference, it was that they were in home office, but maybe if you ask them again, they would feel that. There was an answer that was that they thought that there were no difference between like the beginning, after the COVID started, and they were saying that they had no concerts planned for March and April. I'm pretty sure that if you ask them right now, maybe they had concerts all July and August, and they are cancelled right now. So I think that it's also, as Stéphane said, that to follow up like with different surveys and to see how the topic is evolving. Like, yeah. And now, Katharina.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria, for the insight a little bit to our survey. At this point, I wanted to add a little bit to it and give some ideas on where we are discussing within the EMC team at the moment, where we would like to go from here, and some additional input we have gathered. In talking with so many EMC members through the online lounges that we have done since early April, and some other things we observed, but also especially also in what we see is happening on a political level, especially on a European level, is that, of course, how important it is to provide good information also to policymakers, to really explain how the music sector has been affected by this. So especially I had one conversation with somebody working in the European Commission who asked me, so how exactly is the music sector affected differently than any other cultural sectors? And of course, there is no easy answer to these questions because of the diversity that we have in the music sector. So what I've tried to do now a little bit is to look a little bit more for different parts of the sector, how they are affected. And as I see already also Steph on here, it takes us back to the beginnings that we had with our European Agenda for Music. Because then, of course, we also look at different groups. We look at live music and education, production, and all these different groups that we, in this process, we had early on for the European Agenda for Music as well. So to look first at, okay, how is each sector affected differently? And I did this, of course, by also looking at the survey, what Maria has just presented. I looked at the conversations and the input we had in our lounges. And of course, I also looked at a lot of the surveys that were conducted by a lot of our members, especially. We've seen a lot of surveys, but not many results have been published yet. So I saw Live DMA has already some very good input out there, how especially the smaller music venues and festivals are affected. European Choral Association had also already put out there some special explaining how the choral world is especially affected. EMU, European Music School Union. So there were a few that have already put together more info specific for their sector. For others, it's more what I've gathered from conversations we had. So this is just a bit of a spotlight. So what we see in live music, obviously what we hear all the time, the cancellation of concerts and events, which obviously means, like we heard, there is no new income coming in. There's even income that was already there from tickets that has to be returned for ticket sales. So complete loss of income, but still costs for rental and so many other things that are still ongoing. And of course, this not only is the venue, but it also, there is for audio and sound technicians is involved, and has a ripple effect obviously to bars, restaurants, hotels, and so many more things when live music is affected. And then also, I mean, what we hear a lot is the first out, last in again with their activities. And with the cancellation of events, or even when we're now looking back at how can we come back again with live music events, of course, the conversation at the moment revolves very much about how the audience can be brought in, how many people can you have in, with what kind of distance can you have the audience in there. Of course, that means a lot of venues will have to look at what time or at what capacity does it make sense for us? Because if the running costs are much higher than what we can make from ticket sales with a reduced audience, it couldn't make sense again. But then we also have to look at the performers. Nellike mentioned it before, choirs and the wind instruments. It's a lot more complicated for them than if you have just an individual musician on stage, for example. So we see that even within the performers, you have very, very different effects and very differently how they have to deal with even coming back. Then when we look at education, we mentioned it before, we have, because EMU has put out a study again, so of course a lot of them have turned to online lessons, but we have for individuals that seems to function rather well, although we also see that depends on having a good internet connection. So we see that the access to music and to music education, this creates also again a different new inequalities again, because you're now dependent on a good internet connection for that to work. For group lessons, again, another much more complicated to do this online, or almost impossible to do it online, and even rehearsals in person as a group. It will take much longer for that to go back than one-on-one lessons, for example. And then, of course, transforming the education to an online format takes a lot of work, has taken a lot of work, and is still ongoing. So that's also a different effect that we have seen. When we look at, for example, at songwriters and composers, something that Sofía and Katharina mentioned as well, maybe some, they now have the income from the royalties from events and everything from last year. But with all the cancellation of events and the reduction in advertising and everything, all of these things, of course, they will have a huge effect on them for their royalties next year. So while they're still maybe living from their income mostly from activities from last year, next year they will feel this much more than they're feeling it now. Also, with the cancellation of events, what we see for music publishers, that a lot less sheet music is ordered. So you also see that, or that some even have reported that because things that are going on online, people are much more just copying sheet music or just sharing them online, but not really buying them. So that's also something that we have seen. And one last point, just because it's about international cooperation, and we've talked about this now before. I mean, even events, and then especially international events, that's probably one of the last things that's going to go back to whatever new normal than what we have. But there, I just wanted to mention one quote we had from the survey, which was somebody representing from a youth orchestra in France that said, we have been obliged to cancel auditions scheduled in several Mediterranean countries due to the closing of the borders, which has impacted our reach in the Mediterranean and severely impacted our mission of promoting mobility and exchange in the Mediterranean. I mean, that's an example from the Mediterranean, but of course you can see that for so many other region and international exchange in general, this long-term effect that it has had. So this is just some example and spotlights how differently and at what different speeds the parts of the music sector have been affected. And part of what we're doing today is also part of this exercise to trying to give an overview with different chapters how different parts of the music sector have been affected, especially because it's so important, because we talk about this a lot within our sector, but it's so important to have something that we have in writing that we can give out to policymakers, that they have something to refer to when they're discussing this help. And because we've seen, it's what Maria presented with the early March responses, and we need financial aid now, but how that will change and those needs will change as we go further in time, and going into even the next month and next year.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think this really shows, I mean, you have said it, both of you, that we have put this out rather quickly at the beginning. And now we are at a totally different place. And I think there's definitely more need, Katharina, you have said it, to not only have anecdotal evidence, what you have just been reporting, but really something more comparable and yeah, more data to bring all this together and to analyze the different surveys that are also out there. I give you some time to think about any questions, and whilst you do that, I would really like to just very spontaneously congratulate Maria. It was her first public presentation for the EMC. She's not a senior officer, she's our trainee. She joined only just a few weeks before the lockdown, so it was, I give you a virtual applause. It was really very well done. Thank you, Maria. So any questions on the EMC survey? Also, if you have any questions to the earlier speakers before we pass on to the last speaker. I look at the participants list if I see any hands up there. Simone, oh no, but I can see it as well.
Elisa, I think.
Elisa, oh yeah, thank you. Then I give the word to Elisa.
Yes, thank you. It's not so much of a question, but rather something that it makes me think of. What Katharina really said at the beginning, that we need to provide good information to policymakers and explain the whole sector. I mean, that's so much work, and I mean, we try to do it for our very small niche sector, so the live music scenes, the venues, the clubs, and we already see how complicated it is. And that just made me think of the feasibility study of a European Music Observatory. And I mean, like right now, this is more needed than ever for our sector. And do you have more information on this? I know that my colleague who is on maternally followed this project, so I'm not involved in this, but I know you are too with the EMC, and do you have information on this, maybe?
Simone, I'll let you answer.
Me or Katharina? It's really stuck. It's stuck somewhere with the Commission. I think my last information on the feasibility study for the European Music Observatory is, of course, this study is finalized, and the study now lies with the European Commission. And of course, at the end of the study, they give clear recommendations. I mean, actually, they give 4 or 5 models how such a European Music Observatory could look like. And of course, but all of these models require, I think, the same budget. All of these models, I think now this require a budget of about 2 million per year. So it's different models, but the budget is the same. And I think at least that's my guess, that the European Commission is hesitant to publish it, because I mean, it was a feasibility study that they commissioned, so they are of course not obliged to publish it or to do something with it. So they have the feasibility study, and now it's up to them to decide whether they want to do something with that or not, whether they want to create such a thing or not. And then if we look at recent events, yesterday namely, with the proposal of the future budget for, the multi-annual financial framework for the European Union, we are of course completely frustrated, so to say, that the budget is even below the original EU Commission's proposal. So, I think that's at least my guess why they are so hesitant in publishing anything, because they don't know if they can do anything. And if they cannot do anything, they will probably not publish anything about the feasibility study, because why publish a study if you don't have the means to do anything with it, then you rather don't publish it. That's my guess. I really must make it clear that's my guess. I have no official answer to that from no source.
Yeah. Thank you, and maybe that's another reason to urge for this music observatory and to urge for some publications, or at least a summary. I saw Babette has another question or comment. Babette Kreiner. Your mic, you have to unmute your mic. Babette, please unmute. Babette, you have to, No, still not?
No,
that's it.
Yeah, now it does. Okay, sorry. Super. We've been asked to give details about 2018 actually to the EFPI, who are doing a research. This is the performing sector. The international, I have to sort of say this well at once. They have the economic footprint of the music sector in Europe. And of course, lots of these data come from national institutions, but this cross-sectoral analysis, which will be important for us, as most of you will know, I represent professional choirs, and we foresee that for choirs it will be more difficult to perform than for instrumental ensembles. So we will need to make an issue about this. What is known already about the economic impact or footprint, or whatever you want to call it, of the music sector that I can refer to? And do you have any idea? And the next question is, have you heard about this research that they are doing?
I think I have heard about it. You mean the IFPI? It's the International Phonographic.
Exactly.
It's the International Federation
of. What it stands for.
It stands for it's the major record labels. It's the conglomeration of the major record labels. We have also received
exactly, but I never know what the FPI stands for. I don't know what
it's the International Federation of Phonographic Industries. Something along these lines.
Phonographic. That's
phonographic.
The word. Super,
it's really the record labels. It's the major record labels association. Yes, so we have also received that input, but we don't feel ourselves in a position to really give good economic data, which might be different, of course, for the professional choirs. So I think it all leads us back to this need of a really independent European Music Observatory, because the question is, who is collecting data on whose behalf, and what do people do with this data, and saying, now I am talking for the music sector, or I am talking for them. So this is really a delicate issue, I think.
Simone?
Yes?
Would you like to explain a little bit about the Music Observatory, because I'm not quite familiar with what it is?
Well, it's nothing on yet. It's an idea that has been floating around in the air, and there's already an audiovisual observatory existing. So that would collect data, that would commission research and studies collecting data on music in Europe. And it would be, it would of course at the beginning not cover all. So it would probably start with some specific industry branches. And at one point, hopefully there is a big picture. Of course, then if it's 10 years between the two, between having the first and having the last. But this is the idea, and there was a feasibility study. So the study was, could we do such a thing? Is such a thing feasible? Is such a thing useful? And in this study, the conclusion is yes, but still the European Commission has to decide if it wants to fund such a thing. And the audiovisual observatory was actually funded or initiated by the Council of Europe. It's a complete different story, and it's quite big. So it's yeah, that's I think full stop. Because we actually, I would like to, I mean, can we maybe stick with the discussion? I mean, I know, or maybe Ruth, I give it back to you, but we also still have your presentation from the music libraries. So maybe we can also jump to that. Not I don't want to, of course, destroy any debate at the moment, but we have invited you also. So maybe
there was one more question, or one more sign for speak from Sandra, I think. So I would suggest I take that, and then we move to the YAML presentation, and then we get back after all the presentations. It would be a pity not to listen to the prepared presentations, I think. So brief question or comment from Sandra, and then we take the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Well, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So, well, my question, well, my comment is quite quick, I think. I mean, I have heard that the difficulties of dealing with the COVID-19 crisis and implementing the measures is the fact that everything is regional. Like even inside this country, for example, here in Spain, different regions have different levels of security and safety measures. Some regions can do things that others can't in terms of association and meeting and traveling and stuff. And here in our case in Spain, the measures, well, at a state level, only health measures are applied, but in terms of culture, for example, it's all decided in a regional basis with regional governments. So we are very confused because we have clear guidelines about, for example, okay, we are in phase 2, you can open a concert hall and you can have 30% of attendance and they have to be seated at this distance, whatever. So everything is clearly set in terms of the audience. But there is, I think, there is a huge lack of guidelines, whether for performers, how should performers act in terms of security measures. And everybody's talking about performances, but no one is talking about rehearsals. And I think there can't be performances without rehearsals. So musicians right now, me speaking personally as an amateur musician, so right now I could perform, but I can't rehearse because we don't know how many people can we be together in a room rehearsing. I mean, I know there have been some studies being conducted. For example, the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra has conducted a study to see how the virus theoretically would spread using, well, like vapor or something like that. And it's a very interesting study, but it's nothing official yet. So I think go. Yeah.
No, I just wanted, you know, also because we have still the other presentation going on. But I think it's very true of obviously what you are saying, and we had the same kind of questions when we were talking about online tools for music education. Of course, standards would be great to have, and also not every orchestra needs to define their own concept. That's what we see now in Germany. Every school and every music school and everybody defines their own hygiene concept, which is of course double, triple, 100 times the same work. So that's also why we try to collect things and information. And for example, in Germany, there are already some rules for rehearsing and also for recording, which especially in the professional world is also relevant. So thanks again for making this comment. And the regional towards international is definitely an issue that we should look at.
Okay, thanks.
I would like to keep the questions for the time being, and please keep them in mind. We will try to give some room for them after the next presentation. But I would now like to invite Anna from the International Association of Music Libraries to give some insight what you have found out. Please, Anna, go ahead. The floor is yours. Do you have a presentation? Yes, you have, right?
Yes. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, it works.
Yes. So, hello everyone. I'm Anna. I'm one of the vice presidents of IAML, International Association of Music Libraries, Archives and Documentation Centers. When the coronavirus crisis hit the world, we decided to run a survey on the impact of COVID-19. We wanted to touch base with our membership and see what type and level of support might be needed. IAML represents music librarians, archivists and information specialists of the world, and one of our key goals is to emphasize the cultural importance of music and music institutions. And this will, of course, be particularly important throughout the crisis and its longer term impact. Now, the survey is a snapshot. It focuses on the immediate impact when large parts of the world went through a stage of lockdown. It's not so much about statistics, but it's about capturing ideas, challenges, and solutions. So participation in the survey went quite well. Not everyone had the capacity to respond, but we have received feedback from various sectors, mostly teaching and research, but also public libraries, archives, orchestral, broadcast, commercial, and special libraries. The immediate short-term impact of COVID-19 is quite clear. The music library world has been working from home, either completely or partly for shorter or longer periods of time. A very small number of respondents have been able to continue working on site with special social distancing and hygiene procedures in place. Now, certain sectors, such as orchestral libraries, were obviously more vulnerable to being temporarily suspended. Public librarians and people working in commercial libraries were more likely to be moved into different jobs. But then for teaching and research librarians, there were more changes of tasks or shifts towards particular aspects within their regular posts. So some tasks are on hold and others require certainly much more time and effort than usual. And the geographical spread of the respondents was fairly representative. IAML has 26 established national branches and we received replies from 30 different countries. There is one common trend. For many, there was no access to physical collections at all. Libraries were relying on online provision only with mixed results. So some common themes emerged from the responses. Music literature provision was possible, but despite best efforts, there were significant content gaps. Audiovisual, relying on a mixture of subscription services and free resources. Archival materials, manuscripts, various special collections were limited to the content that had already been digitized. And then notated music editions seem to be sort of the main point of frustration. As with audiovisual, there's no real option to purchase individual titles with institutional licenses for libraries. And the financial threshold for subscription packages is significantly higher. So a lot of libraries gratefully made use of temporary free trial access offered by publishers. But this has emphasized the need for longer term solutions. Now, survey aside, this raised some red flags for me. The paradigm shift towards e-provision is accelerating, but are we really ready? The responses indicate that resourcing and funding implications increase inequality. Content gaps need solutions that go way beyond online purchasing. And the challenge of made-to-measure content based on user needs in an online environment is an issue. Obstacles and solutions have depended on the length and the conditions of lockdown. So libraries with a limited capacity for opening have been looking at quarantine of physical items, providing reduced services and implementing access restrictions to ensure safety. Libraries with staff access only are developing services such as scan and deliver, click and collect, postal home service. Libraries without access to the premises can only deliver online-based services. Another obstacle feeds back into the responses about the resources, content gaps, pricing, access to free resources only, either temporary or permanent free resources. Copyright restrictions determine, for example, the scope on scan and deliver. Funding potentially restricts everything. Some libraries could redirect funding, but others had to work around just solving firefighting with frozen budgets, really. Travel restrictions. Students, for example, can't return to their institutions. There's logistical issues, postal services, delays. So lots of obstacles that libraries had to deal with. Some libraries have managed to negotiate some temporary adjustments. Copyright licenses have been extended in some countries, although text-based only. Collection development, there were probably temporary shifts to e-only for an unspecified duration. And then there have been adjustments to subscriptions and the creation of new services. Now, although some user services were totally impossible to deliver, we received a lot of positive can-do answers. Inquiries were very well handled through the use of various online platforms, tools, and user guides. Despite a complete shutdown of live performance, creative solutions were found and some regular activities around performance sets continued. Oops. Music has been so important to many people during this crisis, and we will need to emphasize this going forward. It has been a very busy time for those teaching and providing online teaching and research support, and it will continue to be so for quite some time. Lack of access to print-only titles was felt heavily, but really a lot of resources have been put into just shifting everything to online teaching and doing the best people could deliver given the circumstances. Conservation was obviously somewhat limited. Certain tasks could go ahead, and people have also been quite creative in finding project-based work, like cataloging projects. There have been broadcasts, streaming, online exhibitions based on pre-existing materials. Communication went well using all obvious options available. And then obviously there are some concerns going forward. It's still very unclear what the main concerns in the longer term will be, but what do you expect? Concerns about services funding, but also around job security, impact, for example, of homeschooling and caring responsibilities among various employees, well-being and safety. We reached out to our members asking who would like help and who could offer help. And we also asked YAML what YAML can do to help. Again, three main themes emerged. Support through sharing experiences, sharing ideas, good practices, develop online forums, platforms, tools, professional development, and create recommendations for the next stages of the crisis, whatever that might look like. Help with resources, negotiations around formats, affordability of online resources, and just compiling, keep compiling and help identifying appropriate resources. And then just share our survey results and continue with advocacy for the profession. Now, some preliminary conclusions. Again, these are very much my take on the responses. Lack of access to physical collections is a significant problem for all music libraries. Recommendations around managing the current crisis and towards future disaster planning are required. How can YAML fulfill its role of promoting a better understanding of the cultural importance of music and music institutions in a socially distanced world? Online music resources are potentially rich in content and diverse in format, but there is huge unexplored potential for future developments. Continued communication between stakeholders in the provision of online content will be beneficial to all. there is a strong feeling of community within YAML, and this is an excellent starting point for international cooperation. We can build on this to reach out to music and library organizations worldwide. That's it from me.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for this, again, very impressive presentation and survey and the results that you have been able to draw from this in such a short time. And as we can see, music libraries effects of all the different branches of the music sector. That's pretty obvious. Are there any direct questions to Anna or any further comments, questions to other speakers that have come across your minds by now, or any further comments to the discussion on observation and data collection that we had before? Yeah, I see Silja. Please go ahead and I'll draw my speakers list from there.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. A question to Anna. Thank you very much for this beautiful and very insightful presentation. I have a question to you as international organization. Have you looked into gaps between different regions of the world as you have members across the world?
Well, we closed the survey on Monday, so I have looked at the answers, but there's still a little bit of work to do. But yes, there are very clear differences. When we're looking at the United States, they are in a much more comfortable position than mainland Europe. When you move east, Eastern Europe is still worse than Western Europe. Haven't had time really to look into the Asia, Australia, that sort of area of the world, or Latin America. We also had, for various countries, we only had one national representative rather than lots of answers from specific countries. So we have to sort of balance the results out a bit to make, but yes, it all comes back to how individual countries are organized, how culture is organized, how where the libraries sit. Is it with culture, is it with education? But regardless of the funding is massive. And that's why the online sheet music was, for some people, were totally reliant on only what's freely available online. And others have all these great, all bells whistling online resources. They already have them. You just add a few users and off you go. It doesn't do everything, but it's enough to get through a few months of crisis. So yes, there's huge differences.
Thank you. Silja, does this answer your question so far?
Can I say something?
There was Katharina. Is it a direct reaction, Pia? I take you first because you're also YAML, and then I take Katharina, who had a question. Please go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say that YAML started this advocacy committee just a few years ago, and Anna is the chair of the advocacy committee, and I'm so grateful that we have this committee at this very moment, and especially that we have such an excellent chair. And another committee is the YAML Outreach Committee, and this survey was a collaboration between the Advocacy Committee and the Outreach Committee, and I think it was an excellent initiative, right in time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting us know. Katharina, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Actually fits very well with what also the addition Pia just made, because I wanted to know if you already know how you're going to use the results of the survey. I know you said you just closed it and you're still in the process of analyzing it, but is it more something also for you at YAML within your network, how you want to address some changes or stuff you want to do, or is it also advocacy towards policymakers? So do you already have some kind of idea how you want to go forward with the information you have collected?
Well, yes, next week we're having our sort of committee meeting to really look into the details, and then we will have to see what we can do and prioritize. The easy bit will be the bit where we develop things within the organization. We give people the support they have asked for around resources and everything. But the difficult bit is, yes, fighting our corner within the library world, fighting the music subject corner, And again, I think there are some differences there as well. Libraries that are pure music libraries, and that we've got libraries where music is a minority aspect of it. Music in public libraries is very, very challenging. So we need to identify the right people and the right channels to just make our voice heard. Yeah, we're hoping to do it, but we haven't quite figured out how to yet entirely. So any tips would be welcome.
I have quite a few speakers still on my list. Before we run out of time, normally we end around 4 o'clock. May I suggest that those who can stay, we continue, and if any one of you has to leave on time, that you just do so, because I think it would be a pity to cut this off. I have still Silja again, I had Stéphane, and I think there are more up. So I suggest we go on like this, and if you have to leave, so goodbye for this time, and then
bye. Thank you.
See you next time, hopefully. So I had
Bye.
Stéphane first, and then and then Silja. Stéphane?
Yes, it is evident that everybody needs information and sharing good practice, but through this survey, I don't see the question of training, and especially vocational training. Is it underlined in your study, or is it something that didn't appear in the answers?
Sorry, was the question to me? Oh,
yes.
Sorry. Well, training is we mostly look at the teaching and research and training within the sector, and there were questions about what can you offer, and what sort of teaching more and training can you offer. There wasn't an awful lot of, because we also had very much open questions, and it wasn't one of the themes that really emerged as one of the sort of main issues. So there wasn't an awful lot of feedback on that. But there are very clear concerns about the impact, obviously, on teaching, and teaching actual musicianship rather than teaching academic study. Very different needs and problems, I think.
Okay, thank you for your further explanations. Anna, I think Silja was next on my speakers list.
Yes, thank you again. And just a small comment to Pia about Pia or Anna, I'm not sure yet now, but about the question of the place of music libraries in the big world of libraries. And I just wanted to assure you that I will be happy, IMC, International Music Council, we will be happy to accompany you in this advocacy field, as the International Music Council is currently actually engaged and working with IFLA, with the International Federation of Library Associations, promoting the role of culture in sustainable development. So we will be happy to reinforce your voice, the voice of the music libraries, in the bigger world of libraries. So you can count on us for this, and if there's anything very concretely we can do, we will be happy to talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this refers again to the fact that we will also look into what members, try to analyze and bring together what members have done, of course, together with the International Music Council. I'm just looking again at the speakers list, but I think, yeah, my anticipation of going on was too early. We get around again at 4 o'clock, I think. So 1.5 hours seemed to be a good timing. Several questions, several participants have asked in the chat if we can make the presentations, etc., available. So yes, we will. It will be on our website. Also, the recording will be public. And I see again, Katharina, is that still on, or is it another comment that you, okay, then please go ahead with another addition.
No, yeah, I just wanted to add something to it, because I mean, Elise touched upon it, this huge task of trying to provide an overview of the music sector. And just, again, I wanted to encourage to all of you, especially the European and the international networks, because obviously I think the task of collecting from all national levels, that's maybe another discussion, but at the moment when we're focusing on the different parts of the music sector, when you have results, or if you put together some information, just to encourage us to send it also to us directly, this would be really, really helpful. And then I just wanted to give a quick update, because we are also talking, of course, with other cultural networks, and there's a discussion also going on, which is coordinated by NCAT at the moment, which is a network of cultural management and research, about trying to bring results of the so many surveys within the cultural sector also together. So that conversation with them is also ongoing, and obviously we're trying to feed many things from the music sector into that discussion. There will be a call, there is a call coming, a call for tender from the European Parliament, because they want to look also on the effects of COVID-19 on the cultural and creative sector. So they're already, the calls, I think next week is they aim to publish that call for tender. So there are also now things from other and different sides developing to bring those things together. And the sooner we have at least some preliminary results, and even if it's just some snapshots and things like that ready, the better we are prepared to feed into those things. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katharina. No, Zilia? No, that was, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We asked ourselves if these tools were really needed and if it was helpful to the sector to have them. And we wanted to ask you the question actually, but I think the discussion has proven that this is highly needed and highly useful to all of us. So we will continue working in that direction. And as Katharina just said, please, with all your help, it's only together that we can be efficient. And on this, I would like to close today's EMC Lounge. And yeah, we will keep you informed about the next editions. So thanks again to the presenters, and thanks for all your contributions. Have a very nice afternoon, and bye-bye.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.